Senator Judd Gregg, the Republican of New Hampshire. He's, of course, a member of the Banking Committee, also the ranking Republican on the Budget Committee. Thanks, as always, for the
Peter,
time.
thanks for having me.
You've been involved in all these issues, so much of the floor debate so far. We're about 2 weeks in right now. Has this bill changed appreciably enough that you might be able to support it?
No, it's going the wrong way. They just passed an amendment that basically turns over to the consumer agency the issue of underwriting. Well, that underwriting is a question of safety and soundness. It certainly shouldn't be with the consumer agency. It should be with the prudential regulators. We're seeing a lot of amendments coming that are basically moving this bill to make our whole system less competitive and less capable to create credit for people on Main Street. I think we're really caught up in this fervor of anti-Wall Street to the point where we're going to end up cutting off our nose to spite our face here and end up significantly contracting credit in this country, because we'll make it so much harder for those people who supply credit to people on Main Street to be able to do that in an efficient and cost-effective way. Given where it's going from your perspective, do you think there's still an opportunity for Republicans to stand in the way, or at the end of the day, is your best bet simply to try and make improvements? We're trying to improve it, and we've offered a lot of amendments to do that. I presume it's going to pass. We're not trying to stop it, and we're just trying to make it a better bill. So far, we haven't had much success. Well, let me ask you about one of the big issues still unresolved that you've been involved in, derivatives. A lot of focus on this. Right now, the original language is intact. Very tough on Wall Street. In particular, there's this provision that would force Wall Street banks to spin off their swaps desks entirely. You've got an amendment to try and remove that, to deal with that. First of all, why is that the right move, and how are you doing in terms of votes? It's not an issue of being tough on Wall Street here. This is an issue of being tough on America. You know, derivatives are very much the oil that keeps the machine going of credit. And people use derivatives for very important purposes. If you're making a machinery somewhere, and your listeners understand this, and you're selling it someplace else, you want to make sure that what you sold it for, if you're going to deliver it 6 months later, is you're going to get the profit you expected out of that machine. So you've got to be able to insure over the cost of money and the exchange rate. You've got to be able to insure over the risk of somebody going under who you're doing business with. You've got to be able to insure over the cost of your raw materials. And that's all done through derivatives. What's to keep Wall Street banks from doing exactly that business, but through affiliates? Well, the reason that Sheila Bair, the head of the FDIC, Paul Volcker, the Fed, and the OCC have all come out against this language is that they recognize that it would significantly contract the ability to do derivatives here in the United States. The estimate is somewhere between $750 and $1 trillion of credit would actually be contracted as a result of forcing you to set up independent swap facilities, because you'd have to capitalize those facilities, and they would actually end up, ironically, being riskier because they would not have the stability of the financial institutions behind them. And so it really is a poorly thought out idea, and you don't have to believe me, you can believe those various independent sort of umpires. And there are Democrats who've suggested it should be altered in some form or fashion. Do you think at the end of the day, is it going to survive? Who knows in this atmosphere? I mean, there's such a vigilante atmosphere out here relative to anything that has Wall Street on it. But if it does survive, it will harm us as a nation. It will force a lot of credit derivatives overseas, and it will contract a lot of the credit activity here in the United States, which means on Main Street, when you're making a product and you're either selling to somebody who uses a derivative or you yourself has to use a derivative, you're going to have trouble finding out how to do that or how to do it at a reasonable price. You've also had some problems with the Volcker rule as laid out here, would bar banks from proprietary trading off their own accounts. Most of the proposals on the floor right now would toughen the Volcker rule, would bring it into effect even sooner. Is that going to survive as well? Looks like it's going to get tougher. I mean, that's my impression. Now, I don't have any problem with the concept of the Volcker rule, and I think the study approach is the way to go. But because you shouldn't be taking risks with insured deposits, which is basically what Chairman Volcker suggested shouldn't occur. But some of these proposals will, again, create an artificial event which really accomplishes very little other than to contract credit here in the United States and make us a less competitive country. Let me ask you, just finally, our time remaining, another big issue in the news that you've focused on in your role on the Budget Committee. I know you're working with the Deficit Commission as well. The Greek debt crisis, is that a warning shot here to the United States? Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. What you have is a situation in Greece where they spent a heck of a lot more money than they were taking in, and as far as your eye could see, they had made obligations which they couldn't support. That's what the United States is. I mean, basically, we were spending a lot more money than we're taking in, and we've made obligations for as far as the eye can see that we can't support with the revenues that we project. And so we're headed down that exact same path. Now, we obviously aren't Greece. We're a much more vibrant economy, and we actually can monetize our debt if we have to. But the simple fact is that It's a very clear warning shot, actually, to almost all Western democracies and Japan, that you cannot live beyond your means year in and year out and project a lifestyle beyond your means, especially when you have a population that is retiring that's going to demand even more services and expect to be solvent as a country.
All right, the deficit, another issue as well.
Thank you,
Senator Gregg, as always, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. We'll be back maybe